need a light, so I can smoke away this pain. I need a light, so I can smoke away this pain.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Elevated Culture. I, once again, am your host, Matthew Stafford, and with me, as always, is my trusty co-host and my good friend, Ryan Cook. Ryan, how are you?
I'm pretty fucking good, Matthew.
Yeah?
I'm excited to be back because I feel like we've
It's been a little while.
Yeah, we almost like we took a hiatus here or something.
I know. We didn't plan on doing that, but you can rest assured we're back in the mix of things here.
The cannabis world is busy.
It's been so busy that we didn't even have time to do a podcast, but we have a lot to talk about, and this episode actually is going to be a fun episode because we don't have a guest. As we talked about when we started this, we were going to do one a month where we were doing some news and topics, and then we're going to do one where we had some guests. We've had a couple of amazing guests recently, and I mean all of our guests have been amazing, but some amazing ones, on the recent podcast, and then we had, of course, the Clinic Charity Classic podcast that came out last time with lots of different interviews and guests from rolling around and doing that cart cast, which was amazing.
That was a great show, by the way. I thought it was so cool to hear from a lot of those different companies. Unfortunately, we can't hear from all of them. There were just too many, but it was a great show.
It was a great show, and it was just great to talk to all of those people. So, but today we do have our news and topics podcast. So I think let's just jump right into this.
Let's do it.
And let's do some news and topics. So as you said a second ago, we got a lot going on in the cannabis industry, in the cannabis world.
Totally.
And we have a couple of things that we wanted to touch on here. I think the first one here is this article that was found in Forbes. And it was reporting that Facebook is finally lifting its ban on pot pages. That is the title. And you read this title, I think maybe you can kind of get excited a little bit if you're in the industry and working in social media and having to jump through the hoops. But when you kind of get into this article and kind of start understanding what it's about, it's like my hopes and dreams were dashed. Like Zuckerberg, like you could have made one leap, one step for mankind, one leap for the cannabis industry, and you didn't really do that here because it's not as exciting as it sounds on paper.
I think there's always some exciting components to something like this, and we have to. In the cannabis industry, I feel like we've always looked at the small wins and not necessarily that we've won the war just yet. So I caution you to look at it, and with a different set of lenses on there as well, because the reality is that we have been nervous about working with Facebook for all of this time, right? I mean, these companies are being kicked off quicker than you can put a new page together, and so it is a challenge. And so the fact that we have gaining some credibility within their organization, I think is one step. It's just that it's unfortunate that they can't just look at us as normal businesses.
I'll take that. I'll take that hit. It's a very valid statement and a very, very true point. You got to take these small wins. What they're saying here. So, Sarah Pollock, spokeswoman for Facebook, she replied to Forbes inquiring about this, and she wrote back to them in an email saying, quote, "This is a change in our tactics when it comes to what is discoverable when using Facebook search. Our community standards make it very clear that buying, selling, or trading non-medical pharmaceutical drugs or marijuana is not allowed on Facebook. People largely find this content that violates our policies by searching for it, so we've made it harder for people to find content that facilitates the sale of drugs on our site. We also look to make content that does not violate our policies discoverable in search. We use a combination of the latest technology in search ranking and our team of reviewers who work 24/7 to minimize the opportunity for illicit drug sales. We're constantly auditing and improving this process in order to do better." So what they're really doing here is they're vetting these companies. They're allowing them to set up a phone number. They're then obviously, the way you do through Facebook Authenticator or like Google Authenticator, you then, get a phone call, you get a code, you can verify with that code that you then type in. They're not giving you the blue status, which apparently is their status that's going to say, you are blue verified, which is for brands, celebrities, and media companies. But they're giving it a gray confirmation, so kind of in the gray space, I guess, for businesses and organizations that aren't eligible for that blue verification. So I guess it is a step, but if I'm going to Facebook and typing in cannabis or marijuana, which, we've tried, and it does work, you still are being led to these companies, and you're still just restricted from a lot of the things that you say, a lot of the advertising and these sort of things. And obviously this advertising is going to go on a state-by-state basis, for a long time. And I know Facebook and other companies kind of have to work hard on trying to regulate that and work within that because they're reaching the entire world. But I mean, you can still search for The Clinic, and I would say everyone listening to this, please search for The Clinic in Facebook's search engine and go and like our page and leave a good review if you feel so. But I don't know. Other than that, it is a small win, but I don't think it does much more.
I think a little bit of what it does is it allows you to use Facebook as, instead of searching for friends and trying to stalk your old girlfriends, right? That now you have the ability to make Facebook like your actual a cannabis experience, right? I mean, if you do just type in cannabis, you are going to be led to a ton of different videos, and I don't know if that's ultimately what their goal was here. I mean, the reality is that like you said, I mean, the title in general is probably a little bit of fake news here. Yes, they've done some work to give us some credibility in the marketplace, but the reality is that Mark Zuckerberg, you old son of a bitch, you're screwing with us still, man.
Yeah, well, I get to that point. I guess it does, allow us to. You are reaching those growth markets. Maybe people who are on Facebook who were typing in marijuana or cannabis before. People who weren't accustomed to certain brands. That sort of thing. It's kind of giving them more of an insight. Also, that's also a plus.
I mean, I guess it just tells you though, like how Big Brother Facebook is. I mean, that they have the ability to limit our searches, based on just keywords, obviously, and making it more difficult for us to find our, the cannabis pages. And ultimately, these are medical companies that are working with people in certain states, right? I mean, they're providing access to individuals right now that they do not have recreational laws for an alternative, and yet Facebook is ultimately limiting your ability to be able to see that.
Yeah, that's true.
And so now they're gonna tell us that we're not doing that anymore. We're gonna allow you guys access to these types of pages, but all they're going to do is still continue to make the decision for us as to what we are going to be able to view. Just like I did, right? I mean, I just searched cannabis. What was the first pages that came up? Did you do it?
I will right now.
So the first pages are paid content pages, of course,
obviously.
Which I just think that great. Cannabis Now magazine, awesome. High Times, Herb magazine. I'm not saying that any of these people are bad, but I'm just saying that what if they really limited us?
I got the bank Cannabis Genetics.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, it's because you search it all the time.
Probably.
Do you grow at home?
I don't.
No?
No, I don't.
Ever grow at home?
I used to, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, I used to. I actually, I lived up between Boulder and Lyons on these 5 acres up there too, and I had the medical card, and so I actually put up built a whole greenhouse up on one of the tiers actually, and so when I wasn't doing the indoor, I would try and do some greenhouse and some outdoor, here and there. To some good luck one season though, the winter came, man. The winter came a little early, froze the ground, and kind of ruined everything right towards the end there. But no, I mean, it was fun. I wish I had the time. I mean, but it takes a lot of time. You have to be really invested in it, in order to do it properly.
It does. I mean, but I think it's something that people should do. once. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to spend ungodly amounts of money to be able to. Obviously, I think you realize the more money you spend on your equipment, probably the better your outcome may be. But I think people, with limited, resources or maybe an outdoor crop. I mean, if you can throw something in your backyard, which we can do here in Colorado, which is pretty nice. But I think it's a fun learning experience.
It's a super fun learning experience, and I agree. I think everyone should give it a try at least once. I mean, it's almost like, brewing your own beer, or, like getting some bees and making your own honey. It's like, I don't know, get into it, like try it out once.
That?
I have,
oh,
yeah.
No kidding.
Dude, I did this when I was living in Northern California, and so I was living on these 53 acres in Nevada City, and we had bears on the property, and so bears are known to come after honey, right?
I mean, I've Winnie.
Yeah.
I know all about him.
Exactly. So there's this mom bear and her 2 cubs, and so when we got the bees and set them up, they were like, yeah, you got to go get an electric fence. And they're like, and then you got to teach the bears to stay away. And so we went and got the electric fence. And as we're talking to the guy, we're telling him what we're doing. He's like, the way to do this and teach them is once you get it set up, get some raw bacon or some raw meat. He said bacon worked best. Okay. Hang it over, like sitting on top of it, like on top of like the electric fence. So it's kind of sitting there, like kind of sizzling just a little bit. He's like, and just sit there and wait and watch. And he was like, and they will come up, and he was like, and they will try and get it, and he was like, and they'll get zapped, and he's like, and they'll try and get it, and they'll get zapped, and he's like, and it'll fall off, and he's like, and they'll get it, and he was like, but they'll learn to stay away from that area by doing it. And he's like, it's not enough of a voltage to actually hurt them. It's protecting the bees, they're getting the bacon, it's a win-win all around eventually. But it was actually kind of fun once we set it up and put the bacon there. We just sat there and smoked a couple of joints and had a beer, and it's like waiting for the bears, like sitting in lawn
Do you have
chairs.
like a bee suit?
No, I didn't. I didn't ever wear a bee suit.
Really?
Yeah, they were super friendly. You'd walk up because you had to feed them all the time. You'd get those big 5-gallon jugs, and you'd make sugar water, and then you'd put that on top of it because that was kind of like feeding all of them. And the first couple of times, I got a little nervous and a little scared, but they were flying around. They weren't. I was feeding them.
I guess they sense fear.
I think bees
you were not
sense
fearful.
fear. I was not fearful of the bees.
Well, that's pretty amazing.
So.
Well, thanks for sharing. That's actually pretty amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's why. Sure, there are a lot of different processes like that. That's a very cool one, I think, to get a chance to experience. But, brewing beer, growing your own vegetables, right? I mean, growing cannabis at your house. I think those are kind of fun things that I'm not saying that everyone has the time to do it forever. It's a fun thing to try once.
And like you said, you don't have to go in and get like the latest and greatest gear and put all of this money into it, whether it's cannabis or growing vegetables. Like, just do it, and I don't know, there's something rewarding too, having done it for yourself and knowing that you can work with nature and work with the earth and produce something like that.
Here in Colorado, I think too, it's probably fairly easy to find some cheap grow equipment.
Yeah, I think it's very, very easy to find some cheap grow equipment.
If someone really wanted to do something indoors, I'm sure you could pull it off. But
I'm sure you could too. I also wondered, there was this thing that they mentioned in the Facebook article where they were talking about one of the latest Gallup polls, and this kind of goes back to the searching, I wonder, and it kind of being allowed. They're saying that the latest Gallup poll puts 65%, which is 2/3 of Americans, fully supporting legalizing marijuana. Then it says only 14% are polled as being current users of that data pool. So that kind of seems a little skewed to me, and I wonder if, I guess making those searches more available to people and having cannabis become more mainstream has kind of led to that 65%, which I think is a very good thing. But that 14% seems a little low to me. And I don't know if it doesn't say what type, like current user. Is it a current user within the past 6 months? Is it a current user weekly, monthly? We don't have that. But 14%, although still a lot of Americans, I wonder if geographically, where some of these states, it is still just medicinal, or there's no medical legislation or recreational legislation, people are supportive, and while they may consume, are not comfortable stating that in a poll.
Sure. I mean, I'm sure tons of people are scared. I mean, if you look back, and I think it's funny you even bring this up because when talking about, a 14% number being, essentially low, years ago we had Golf Digest calls. And called us based on the fact that we do the golf tournament every year for the Clinic Trader Classic, and they called and said that they wanted to do an article because they had done a story on cannabis use and a poll with all of their readers, and asked how many use alcohol on the course versus how many utilize cannabis on the course, and ultimately, the question was kind of how does this affect your game, and can people give a little information? They ended up doing the poll, and I mean there was some crazy number in alcohol, which I think all of us would venture to believe, right? I mean, you've got to be in the 80-90% that people are consuming alcohol on a golf course. But I mean, first off, let me ask, what do you think? Knowing that the answer there was 14%, what do you think people answered in Golf Digest?
4%?
1%.
Wow.
So 1% of the responders ended up saying that they, consumed cannabis on a golf course. So the next story was bullshit. And they called us. They looked up, here legalization was happening in Colorado, and they said, you guys are a company here that has been both on medical and moving into the recreational market, and we'd like to talk to you guys. You do this golf tournament every year. How can we come out? So they came out and actually did we played around at City Park together.
Oh, nice!
It was amazing. Awesome. It was amazing. They did a story in Golf Digest. You can definitely look it up. But
did they smoke?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. He's a super cool guy too.
The 1%.
A lot of fun, right? Yeah. But that was his point. Was come on. I mean, you got to be honest when doing these polls, and they see so much, so much information that is skewed there, and I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. Is let's dive in on that. But I mean, I do think that when you look at what I saw something not too many years ago here that was at about a 1%, right, and that now 14% feel comfortable to go ahead and say that, right? I mean, the laws have not changed, right? I mean, if you have a hot drug test, you're going to lose your job.
Yeah.
So there are probably quite a few people who are still extremely concerned about that.
No, that makes complete sense, and that's a whole other factor, whether the job is played into that or not, whether they consume very privately and discreetly or not at all because of that. That's something that I think would hold back a lot of people.
Have you ever been a part of a Gallup poll?
No.
I haven't either. So I don't know. I mean, do they approach you on the street here? Are you going to lunch with your boss?
Yeah, right? How do they
and they ask you this question? So
do they send something in the mail? Like,
I honestly don't know, and I'm sure that someone will tell us that we're completely stupid, and and I apologize, listeners out there, that I'm not super up to speed on these Gallup polls, but the reality is that I'm curious as to how the questioning happens, right? I mean, if you're nervous about your job or concerned about someone else hearing, I would think that the numbers would be absorbently high that individuals would sheer away from that statement.
Yeah, and like I said, also, how is the question asked? Is it, what is a current consumer? Is it someone who consumes daily, multiple times a day, weekly, monthly, once in the last 6 months, Right. I don't know what that definition is right now, or how that question is phrased when it's being asked. I would assume it's fairly simple, but I don't know. It could be something completely different.
Because I think they say 80% of the usage comes from 20% of the users, right? So
classic 80-20 rule.
The 80-20 rule.
Yep.
So it's these things are already out there.
Yeah, no, I think they definitely are. Well, one more thing before we kind of move on to some other news. There are a lot of big things happening. I did kind of want to ask you, I mean, we've been working together for a long time. We've had, we've seen a lot of things happen with social media. We've had a lot of social media accounts, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram, Twitter, all of these MySpace. I'm still very active on MySpace, everyone. Hit me up there. I'll put you in my top friends. brands, Tom, I might bump you. But, so seeing this little step by Facebook and kind of knowing the past challenges that we've seen, like, what do you think these other platforms, Facebook included, I guess, like, how soon do you see a change happening? And how do you think that's going to affect brands and their marketing strategies? Like, even though it seems like it would open it up, it seems like brands have had to be very, very strategic, and their marketing managers and such have had to be very smart in the way that they've kind of, maneuvered through these waters. How do you think that's going to change as things open up?
Well, for us, it's been difficult. Over the years, we've definitely lost our page multiple times. And I think, when you build up, a really incredible user base and then they lose you from their feed, it may be very challenging for that company to regain that connection with those individuals. And so it's devastating to an organization to not have that platform. I mean, I think we've all become extremely, addicted to the concept of being able to use social media as really your voice. In fact, actually, I think that's one thing as the clinics organization, and I think most people out there can say, if you do go to our website regularly, you would recognize that most of that information is staying fairly static, and a lot of our voice and the change in what we are ultimately suggesting to our core users is coming from these social media platforms. So again, that's why it's exciting that we have a little bit of maneuverability here. But the reality is that I kind of feel like Facebook has always been more of the more traditional, more more conservative of the social media platforms. And so I think it would be very interesting to see what something like Instagram does. We all recognize the connections in business and whatnot, but they've used it as a platform that they've ultimately allowed a little bit more flexibility. So I would hope that Instagram, and I think most of us have probably recognized at this point, Instagram has clearly become the more, I think for our organization, our younger demographics, you see Instagram being the more used platform, I would think. I mean, is that fair to say?
Yeah.
So, I would think that we would see something starting to happen there before we would see it on some other platforms, at least where it was impactful. Mm-hmm. There's probably other platforms that are utilizing this. Clearly, we have cannabis platforms like Mass Roots and Doobie and different social media platforms along those lines that are allowing this, and clearly it's an open forum. But I think what's different is that, again, someone who is not a mainstream mainstream cannabis user or a core user or however you want to identify them, but that they choose to jump onto Facebook and again want to make the experience a more cannabis open experience, and I think they can do that now based on what Facebook is allowing through the platform. But I will still say, Zuckerberg, you son of a bitch, you need to allow us an opportunity to be able to put these things on the site.
I really think Tom has a chance of coming back. If Tom were just to say MySpace, he can advertise, everything, they could make a comeback.
Sure.
We could start designing the backgrounds on our walls again,
picking your favorite music.
All of that sort of stuff.
Oh, jeez. You're dating yourself.
Like I said, I'm very active on MySpace. All right, let's talk about one other thing on social media when it comes to even brands and things being shut down. Sometimes you don't even have to do anything wrong. Sometimes you just get some trolls. And you just get people who just straight up don't like you. And they're going to do everything in their power to report. Like, I don't know who has the time to do this, but people apparently have time on their hands to actually go after people or brands that they don't like and report them multiple times, flag their images, their content, all these sorts of things. But eventually, they get shut down, and that can really hurt a brand and having to rebuild and do that. And I think that's a really tough thing in this day and age, too.
It's devastating. And if that is really what people are spending their time doing, I think we all recognize that organizations will take whatever opportunity they have to get a leg up on their competitors. So it doesn't blow me away, but I think that's challenging that we're all in this cannabis community together, and yet within the first real decade of us seeing, significant sales in cannabis and legalization moving across the country, we're already going at each other's throats and attempting to make this more challenging. I mean,
it's already challenging enough, and it's going to continue to be that way. Yeah. So
I happened to see online recently the Cali Terp Factory took a bit of a hit at the last event they were at out in California.
Almost a legitimate hit. Yeah.
I mean, these guys get pretty serious out there. I've always said this to a lot of my friends here, and Addison DeMora years ago. What's up, my man? Was here in Colorado for a Cannabis Cup. I want to say it was 2013 or something like that, and he came up to me in the middle of the event and said, I can't believe this. I just don't understand. Why are you guys all so cool with one another? And, I said to him, I'm like, man, this is, I recognize that it's been a highly competitive market no matter where you are. I know California is obviously, which, I tip my hat. They've been, leading the charge for quite a few years. And I think they've probably dealt with some of this competition longer. And maybe that's why, they see it the way they do. But I said to him, no question. I can only imagine he'd be out in the parking lot slashing tires,
Seriously, yeah.
And I think we saw that with the incident with the Cali Turf Factory guys. I mean,
yeah,
people get serious, man.
So serious. Like, in that video, I think he actually yells at him. Almost a direct quote. You Skeletor-looking potato sack son of a bitch. This dude has the anarchy symbol tattooed on the side of his head and calls this dude Skeletor looking.
Oh man, dude, that was some shit. Thank you, Giddy Up, by the way, too, because
for getting that on camera.
Yeah, I saw some of that on Giddy Up's page. Also, news and topics related, LAX now allows you to travel with cannabis.
Yeah, they allow you to fly out.
That's pretty amazing.
And especially if you're going to another cannabis-friendly state.
I can't wait to go back to Cali.
Right?
I was Cali Turf Factory was on my mind.
Going, back. And then flying back to Colorado. Makes things easy. Not that I would, fly into a space where it doesn't allow me to do that.
That would be crazy, man.
That would be absolutely crazy. I would never insinuate that I do that or anyone that I know does that. Well, let's move on to something, a little more intense here. I know we've kind of been all over here, and it's been fun, but I think something
we are all over while I'm reading my beer can. I was this segment coming to you from About Damn Time, Indian Pale Ale, Four Noses Brewing Company.
Elevated Culture, we are brought to you by puppies. If it's not a puppy, it's a dog. Well, I think we should get a little serious here really quickly, even though we are brought to you by puppies. There is some other big news, and this is world news, and I think we got to kind of intro this the right way. So, without further ado.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all thy son's command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, with true north strong and free, from far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Oh, I think we were harmonizing.
Congratulations, Canada!
Yeah, Canada! You did it. You beat everyone. You beat everyone to the finish line.
Our amazing friends up north have really moved the finish line.
Yeah, and actually my home and native land. Yeah.
True.
Yeah, it's true enough. But big news. October 17th, Canada, the first G7 country, as people like to say, the first G7 country, first major country to legalize cannabis nationwide, which is an extremely huge deal.
It's amazing. I mean, They're really pushing things forward here, I think, with both with in their own country, but also with international regulations, and they're allowing shipping to multiple countries at this point, which is crazy. I mean, Germany, Australia, countries like this allow medical use of cannabis in the country, but they do not allow cultivation. And so, because they do not have any of these regulations yet, a country like Canada allowing federal legalization allows them some flexibility in being able to ship that product.
Yeah, which is huge. But one of the big things is, I mean, as we've seen in any market that kind of goes recreationally, even here in the States, one of the big topics that happened was they were running out of supply on that first day. And to me, I had people tell me this, and I kind of just said, I'm not surprised. We saw it here in Colorado. We've seen it in Nevada. We've seen it in a lot of states when things first come online. And I wasn't surprised, even though we hear about all of these million square foot greenhouses and all of these sorts of things. And you would think there's so much. But again, they are exporting. There is a medical market. They are in this transition period. There's going to be a little bit of growing pains here.
Well, and there's excitement around legalization. I mean, we had here in Colorado in 2014, we had 1,000 people in line at 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. in the morning, waiting to be able to get in to purchase legal cannabis. So it's not a shocker to me that you would see this similar situation up in Canada, and that people are excited about this. I mean, this is changing the world. I mean, this is a big deal.
It really is changing the world. I mean, it is a huge deal. I'm kind of getting goosebumps actually just talking about it and
amazing,
thinking about it, because it is such a big thing.
We have seen so many individuals fight for so long to be able to have access to cannabis like this. And although, yes, it is regulated, this is not legalization in the sense that the plant is now available to anyone and accessible by anyone. These are regulated organizations, and of course will become large corporations. And they have in Canada, they've allowed for some versatility in that as well, is that they do have these large LPs that have the ability to both be on the Canadian Stock Exchange and also be shipping internationally. You also have an ability to be a smaller operator and operate within the confines of the territory where you're at.
I think it's great. I think there's an article in the New York Times. I mean, you can really look anywhere. New York Times, Fortune, Google it. You'll find a million articles on this. But, Mike Farnworth, who's British Columbia's Minister of Public Safety, is quoted in the New York Times piece as saying, legalization of cannabis is the largest public policy shift this country has experienced in the past 5 decades. And I think that is a pretty powerful statement. Knowing how progressive Canada has been in certain areas with gay rights, feminism, abortion, things like that, to say that this has kind of been the biggest public policy change in the past 5 decades. And it even goes back to, the first article we were talking about with Facebook. That shift kind of had to be made a little bit because of what Canada did. It's kind of forcing these corporations in the rest of the world's hands, right?
It really is, and I mean, we've talked about this. As you're saying here, is that it has at least set a timeline so that the international community can make a decision here. And I think we've even seen U.S. policymakers make a few comments here in the last week or so, making statements about kind of where we're at in comparison to the Canadian market. And I think this is something we have to look at on a global market. Cannabis, although we really talk about it in something that is such a natural product and we've all coveted and can really understand at a localized level, it's in the world global market. This is big business, and we're going to see major changes with cannabis in the pending years based on that. And so I think we're starting to see the very beginning. Canada has obviously, like I said, although they have moved forward, they've also set the line in the sand and said when edible regulations are going to come into effect and when concentrate regulations are going to come into effect, which we're looking probably year and a half out, 2 years out from some of these things coming into play. And so due to that, at least it does give the international market an opportunity to potentially catch up.
Yeah, to potentially catch up and a possibility to leapfrog in a sense. I mean, I think I mentioned that on a previous podcast where I posed the question, do you think that the United States has the ability, if we were to make a shift very quickly in these next couple of years, knowing the timeline they have set, but also knowing the types of extraction and all of the things we know? Because a lot of people in Canada are coming down to the States and asking questions and looking at these extraction machines, looking at all of the different safety regulations, all the different fire regulations that you have to have. They don't know a lot about these things, but eventually it's going to come up there. So there's a chance for education on our end, but also a chance, if the country moves this way, nationally, for maybe the United States to kind of get ahead in certain markets.
I don't disagree, but I mean, I'm also going to touch on the fact that, this is what's crazy about legalization, right? I mean, you have federal legalization happening in Canada, and you just noted that there's quite a few individuals coming down here to check out the technology, right? I mean, both here in Colorado and at a national level, I think we've done an amazing job on the cannabis side of seeing incredible innovation in this space. And yet, these guys are coming down from multi-million square foot cultivations to come and check out the technology that we're utilizing here on extremely small scale comparatively, and yet they're coming down here scrubbing their phones, dumping their computers, not able to identify what they're doing or who they work for at the border. I mean, this has become bananas. I mean, it is really it's an interesting change to the way that we're seeing our two countries now operate with one another on something that is federally legal in one country, legal in at least at a medical level in half of the country here, and yet we can't have individuals come down from Canada. We can't feel comfortable as cannabis business people to head over the border and really see world change, not just North American change.
I think that speaks to the larger opportunity here. I mean, even you and I personally have been able to speak and had the pleasure of speaking with people in a lot of other countries, Slovenia, Macedonia, Croatia, Hungary, these places where they have small cultivations, things, but don't have, the access that we have. But again, it still is. They look at extraction over there in certain parts of Europe as you have 1 milliliter of extract and it's considered heroin. It's a hard drug, but you can have multiple pounds of flower, and you can be growing in these greenhouses and such. There is a chance to create like world change, and Canada has taken that step, but there is a lot that has to be done, and there is a concern that the United States, I think, and at least in my mind, would take a hard line, even if they, federally made it legal or took a stance on it, would still try and strong arm a little bit, and make it a little harder for those communications to still be open. Sure. I would hope that that's not the case, but I think a lot of that falls down to what's coming up now, which is voting too, which is getting out there and understanding, who you're voting for, the policies you're voting for, the initiatives you're voting for, kind of getting involved. I sent out some mail-in ballots that I received, to some people that I know who are out of state traveling right now, but made sure they got them. And I actually texted them the other day, and they were like, "Oh, thank you for sending those priority and, and all this stuff and making sure that I got them." And I said, well, I was like, I'm Canadian. I was like, I can't vote here. I was like, I want to make sure everybody I know has the chance to exercise their right to vote, And
we're looking at you, Michigan and North Dakota. We're looking at you, Utah. We're looking at you, Missouri. We've got, as we generally do in big election years and in midterms, is that we have opportunities to really see quite a few of these states make some serious positive change in cannabis legislation and regulation. And right now we have full legalization on the table for both Michigan and North Dakota. We have medical marijuana legalization on the table for Utah. Stop and think about that for a second. Medical marijuana legalization in the state of Utah. Things are changing, people. Let's rock the vote.
Rock the vote, indeed. And I think that there's two important things that actually come up there. I think the more that these states that we're talking about do bring on medical programs or full legalization, you look at the states that they're eventually you're going to force the hand, I think, of these other states. I mean, you look at Colorado, and remember when Colorado legalized marijuana, and there was a lawsuit brought against Colorado by a couple of states, right? Like one of those states now, Oklahoma, now has medical marijuana. So Kansas, if Missouri gets it, you're kind of getting boxed in here a little bit, and eventually you're going to have to kind of make the choice, or your hand is going to be forced. And I think that is the power of people voting and being involved, and what we're seeing with this progression with cannabis legalization, whether it's medical or recreational. I also did want to bring up that there was an article on marijuana.com, and it was titled "Your Vote Matters, Especially If You Care About Marijuana." And just kind of the lead in there, they talk about kind of a Democratic activist, and they talk about a Republican activist, and they talk about these guys. They're both billionaires, and how much money they're putting into programs to get people to vote, and basically what it's saying, and I think is such a great point to take away, is like your voice and your vote does matter. If not, like, why would billionaires be putting money into like nationwide youth voter registration drives if they didn't know or think that your voice mattered? Right?
I would agree. I mean, Sheldon Adelson has been someone who has done as much as he can possible to stop cannabis regulation throughout the country, and he's not going to do anything different this year. And I think you're hitting the dab on the nail, my friend. That it requires all of us to step up and do fucking something. Right? I mean, you have to get out there. You have to talk. I listened to so many people tell me over the last election that it didn't matter. They didn't need to vote. These are people that I actually look at as smart individuals, well-educated, have a political thought in their mind, and yet decided that voting didn't matter. I'm so confused. I'm so, beside myself because, ultimately you see such division in the country right now. And a lot of that is happening based on the fact that for whatever reason, we chose not to participate.
And also, I mean, on an individual level, it's stand for something or fall for everything, right?
I couldn't agree more, Matthew.
So, again, like I said, I can't vote in the United States of America as a Canadian citizen, but I would highly urge everybody who can to go out there and to vote, make their voice heard, be empowered, empower yourself, because it is an empowering feeling to actually cast that vote for something that you believe in and something that you want to see change. I would definitely say, rock the vote.
Rock the vote.
Rock the vote, indeed.
Our MTV VJ personalities are coming out here, dude.
Yeah, they are. We just need Diddy now. He'll come on, do a rock the vote with us. Well, I think we're almost at that time for one of our favorite segments. But before we do that, I did just want to bring up, something that we've talked about just a second ago, where there are these states and now a country where there is a lack of supply. There is a lot of demand. But there are a lot of articles, and also if you look at the statistics, there are huge price drops because of the amount of cannabis that is, flooding the market in certain states. Oregon, Washington, I mean, even Colorado, it's hurting a little bit. And so there's this article on Leafly, it's titled "Cannabis Prices Collapse, Putting Billions in Consumers' Pockets." And, it's saying that wholesale cannabis prices could hit a low of $30 an ounce in some parts of the country by Christmas, as another record crop for outdoor cannabis floods the market and sinks prices. So they're saying that, for example, the legal recreational market in Oregon continues to drown in multi-year surplus. Oregon produced 10 times the cannabis it needs each year, and approximately 825,000 pounds of unsold dried wholesale flower now sits in the state's tracking system. You start seeing these things go low and low and lower. You're talking about $30 an ounce. You're talking about, $1.33 a gram in some states, wholesale price. It can't get much lower. And, I know when people talk about these outdoor crops, they say this is coming in, this is going to drive everything down. Where do you think this is going? I mean, eventually people are going to get out, I feel like, because it's like people saw it as a gold rush, got in, cultivated. And, eventually some of those people are going to get pushed out because they're going to say, I can't even keep the lights on if you're using lights.
I might be the wrong person to ask for this because, I ultimately, I hate to burst people's bubbles, but the reality is that the price can go lower, Matthew. It can go lower. And we're seeing large-scale agricultural practices applied to cannabis and therefore can drive that price down. I mean, I had an opportunity, we're excited, right? I was out in Oregon. I think I talked about it on the show, a little while ago. In fact, our good friends over at the lab are going to be launching there here in November, December. And so lab products will start entering the market there. And really what I think I saw while I was out there was absolutely, a physical manifestation of what you are identifying. I mean, this is, I was terming it oil fields because you would go out and see fields of cannabis, and yet there was no real outlet for this product, and therefore, yes, the price is going to continue to drive down. And I think, Oregonians would love to see, interstate commerce laws, relaxed so that they had the ability to ship their product, that they have these large scale outdoor cultivations and are growing amazing cannabis, that they have the ability to provide that cannabis to people throughout the rest of the country.
I also think with this surplus, I think I'm also seeing, and this is just an opinion on my end, I'm seeing that cannabis has become, it used to be much more social in the sense of rolling a joint or a blunt and passing it around with friends, and you still see that, to a certain extent. I think more so at concerts and things like that, at least for me. But I feel like it's become, in both medical and recreational, a little bit more of an individualistic type of thing. People know what they like, and now people also have the choice to be very discreet about it, whether it's through an edible or whether it's through a sublingual or whether it's through a vape pen. We're seeing the vape market, grow extremely. And a lot of this can be concentrated down into these other forms. And I think we're seeing that growth trend in the market. There will always be, obviously, a market for flower and dried flower and for combustibles. But I think, what can happen with a lot of this, again, like you said, interstate commerce, I think, would definitely open that up, especially to parts of the country that do not have climates and environments that allow for people to grow cannabis at that level, and also would cut down on energy consumption because people wouldn't be growing inside, these sorts of things. So there are pluses to that. But as it's become a little bit more, individualized and people having that choice with the concentrates and the extracts and such, I feel like there's also opportunity, and I'm hopeful that there's R&D, and I know personally a lot of people who are working on exciting technologies and new methods and techniques, and I'm really hoping that surplus is also used to help drive the industry forward to new products and new methods and technologies in extraction and concentration.
I couldn't have said it better.
Well, thanks. Well, with that, let's go into our. I dropped the mic if it wasn't on a stand.
Clearly.
But with that, let's go into I think both of our favorite topics, and that's called What you tokin about?
What you talking about, Matthew? Why don't you go first? You always have me go first. I'd love to hear what you're talking about these days.
So I've kind of gone back to an old favorite, just like an old friend. It's someone who's always there. It's like time never passes when I meet up with this old friend, and I've been using it to relax. Been using it to help me go to sleep. And I've been using it in multiple forms: combustible, in live resin sugar, and also in a PAX pod. Old staple, Bubba Kush.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know in the last couple ones that we got, we were talking about some stuff that the bank was doing. We were excited. And I'm still also very excited by all that, and I've been trying out a bunch of new things. But one staple that I keep coming back to over the past month has been Bubba Kush. And there's just something about it. It's Bubba Kush by the flavor, the smell, in any way that I consume it. It is so pleasant to consume. Just that exhale and getting that taste, it rolls all the way through my tongue. So Bubba Kush, I've been welcoming my old friend back.
You made my mouth water a little bit there.
Hey, that's what Bubba Kush does.
What I have been talking about these days, Matthew, is and this is what's exciting. I think the fact that we work so closely with the bank and everything that those guys are doing over there. Super exciting stuff. I love seeing, going over, talking to Jay and to Josh and seeing all the new strains that they have coming down.
I could get lost over there for hours.
It really is. And Jay will literally take you through there for hours if you wanted to, and show you every single one of those strains, tell you all the differences about it. I mean, it's absolutely amazing the level of detail that they understand about these products, and super exciting for our patients and customers, because I think one thing that I think most clinic customers and patients would probably agree is that there have been some incredible staple strains of the clinic, on the shelves for quite some time, all from our friends over at the bank. But I think some people are saying, "Hey, show me something new, right?"
Coming down the line.
And that's what's been really fun, and something for me is because kosher has always been near and dear to my heart. I absolutely love kosher kush. I'm an indica guy. I think a kush connoisseur. That's something that I really prefer, and I think everyone out there, our listeners, know that I'm a big concentrate fan, but with what those guys have been doing at the bank, I have been smoking more and more flower, and I think we've seen even something incredible happen in the retail stores. And I really want individuals to recognize is that the clinic has made a major change in the freshness of the product that ultimately you're seeing on the shelves every day. And so we've brought in some incredible brains and minds in drying and curing, and really tried to evolve the process a little bit and add quite a bit more heavy levels of science and of art, into the way in which this product is done. And so you're going to start seeing some incredible product coming on the shelf, not only from, new genetics and new products like that, but also in some highly refined and improved ways of drying and curing. And so I'm really excited for our patients and customers to have a chance to see that. But although I said, kosher is my favorite, one of those crosses that Jay and Josh over the mad scientists at the bank have done.
Can I guess?
Please go ahead.
303 crossed with kosher.
Oh my God.
Yep. Oh, I got to sample a few phenos of that myself.
It was absolutely incredible. Then I got to see it all the way through into I tell you, people, get involved in this industry. You get some behind the scenes type look at this, and had a chance to try both the flower and the concentrate, because that's something that we'll test all the way through. Concentrate was absolutely amazing. I can't wait for people out there to get a chance to try these, and they're trying different ones. The kosher race fuel, awesome,
amazing,
super good one. I mean, like they're going to continue to bring through some pretty incredible products. So keep an eye out in the clinic stores here, people, because I think you're going to see some incredible changes that I think have been something that you as customers and patients have been asking for, and you ask you receive.
There you go. So that is What You Tokin About. I'm talking about an oldie but a goodie. You're talking about something new. So we got something fresh-faced. We got an old reliable. I think we kind of evened it out there, balanced the scales.
I think it was solid.
Solid indeed. So, well, Ryan, this has been another great episode. Again, always love doing this with you. I would definitely say to anyone listening, please go to our Facebook page. Just type in The Clinic. You will find us. Like the page, leave a review, interact, with the posts, comment, do what you do. And then also check us out on Instagram. It's at @theclinic_Colorado. Colorado is spelled all the way out. As always, you can reach us also by sending an email if you want to at elevatedculture@thecliniccolorado.com. And, if you're listening to us on iTunes, we would be super grateful if you would subscribe, rate and review. That really does wonders for us on iTunes. And know that if you're getting this through Podbean, we are also looking into other platforms, putting this on Spotify, putting it on Stitcher, making sure that anyone and everyone can get it through whatever their favorite platform is, so that you can tell your friends, and it'll just be very, very easy for them to find and listen to. So as always, Ryan, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. And ultimately, people, if you want to jump over to Matthew Stafford's MySpace page, you can see all of this information as well.
Yeah, my feed is filled with things about me making honey with bees and putting bacon on electric fences for bears.
Well, I gotta say, people, I absolutely love you. Thanks for tuning in on a regular basis, and we look forward to hearing from you next time.
Until next time, keep your culture elevated.